It's beautiful springtime outside. I am so excited. This is a wonderful time of year for everyone. But 200 or 300 years ago, this was one of the most difficult times of year because everyone was starting to be out of their winter storage food, and yet there is nothing outside right now that we can harvest, nothing we can go out and pull together for brand new food. That's still a month or two away. So how do we survive the very end of winter and the very beginning of spring? This is what we're talking about today. In the past, we've done a couple of episodes that have hit this subject dead on. A potato soup, an onion soup, and a wonderful beef stew. But today I wanted to pick a root vegetable that would be classic for this, that isn't talked about very much, and that's specifically the carrot. And carrots are a very, very interesting topic specifically for this time period, this 17th century and then 18th century, because carrots are an odd kind of a root vegetable. Old-fashioned carrots don't look like carrots that we have today. In fact, the carrots we have today are a development of the 17th and 18th century, where they took these strangely multi-rooted and odd-colored, they took these and bred them into this sandwich carrot, the classic orange carrot that we have today. This is right out of our time period, and this is a wonderful food for growing because while it might not be as amazingly prolific as a potato, it is fairly easy to grow. And one of the great things about it being a kind of crop for this time of year is it's easy to store. So we can store these carrots in a cellar, or there are certain circumstances where we can just leave them in the ground to be harvested when we need them in the spring, instead of bringing them in and trying to keep them good. If we bundle these all together, they tend to go bad. So a lot of times in the 18th century, they would separate these, put these in like bins of sand or maybe straw to keep them separated from another. Or if they just leave them in the ground, well, that'll work out too. We've got a couple of wonderful and very comprehensive resources from the middle of the 18th century, gardening books. This one, Philip Miller in a Gardener's Calendar from 1732, specifically talks about carrots and the idea that we can leave them in the garden for all winter long. And most of these gardening books from this time period, especially the English gardening books, don't just leave the garden alone in the wintertime like we are used to here in North America, where there just isn't anything to do. They have things to do basically for every season of the year. A little bit of prep work even in January, where we don't do that at all. And here in North America at the end of the 18th century, we have Amelia Simmons' American Cookery Cookbook. And at the beginning of that, she talks about different food groups. So it doesn't have recipes, it talks about food, and there's a whole paragraph on carrots. But at the end of that, it says, they're good, they're rich in soups, excellent with hash in May and June. So she's specifically picking out these carrots. Earlier on though, she talks specifically about the color. She says the yellow ones are better than the orange ones or the red ones. So we see they do have multiple different kinds of colors of carrots here. Most of the English cookbooks from the 18th century that I do my research from are fairly high level, so for expensive households. A carrot is a fairly lowly vegetable, probably in the 18th century, very inexpensive, and so you do not find a lot of classic recipes that feature carrots as sort of the top ingredient. It doesn't show up all that often. But I did find a couple, and especially a couple of soup recipes that I think can really point to some things for us. So the one we're going to be using today is out of the Queen's Royal Cookery, and this is published in 1713. Again, it's an English cookbook from the time period. There were no American cookbooks in this time frame. Here is the recipe for a soup of carrots, and this recipe is hilarious. You know, we expect recipes today to have a giant list of ingredients with exactly how much we're going to put together and exactly the method, and it takes up a whole page. Well, this is the entire recipe for a soup of carrots. Being boiled cleansed, stamp and season them in all points as before, thus also potatoes, skirrets, parsnips, turnips, Virginia artichokes, onions or beets, or fry any of the aforesaid roots, being boiled and cleansed and peeled and floured, and serve them with beaten butter and sugar. So that was the entire recipe there. I mean, most of it isn't even about a soup. It's about frying them. I don't get it. Here's another one that maybe will help us get a little bit more idea about what's going on here. To make carrot soup, this is from about the same time period. Both of them spell soup S-O-O-P. That kind of gives you an idea. Boil your carrots, cleanse them, beat them in a mortar or a wooden tray, put them into a pipkin with butter, white wine, salt, cinnamon, sugar, sliced dates, boiled currants. Stew these all together, dish them on sippets, garnish with hard eggs in halves or quarters, and scrape on sugar. Okay, so the first one seems pretty simple. I mean, I think what they're really saying is, peel some carrots, chop them up, boil them, and then turn them into a puree, basically. We're gonna smash them all up. And they don't even really kind of go into the hint of, oh, you're probably gonna have to add a little bit of the liquid back in and really turn this into a soup. Or really, I think a lot of times these soups were very, very thick. We wouldn't really call it a soup today by the thickness that's implied in most of these. But we're gonna make a very, very simple soup here. We're talking about winter survival. And most people aren't going to be doing all these crazy things with it. They're gonna be putting in cinnamon and dates and odd things like that. For the standard household, we're gonna be using regular carrots. We're gonna be scraping them and boiling them, and then turning them back into this soup so that they're easy to eat and as filling as possible. Let's prepare our soup. Pick out the carrots that you'd like to use. You probably don't want carrots that are too big. They tend to be, well, not as flavorful as a nice smaller carrot, although it's a lot more work. To peel these carrots, I'm just gonna scrape these. You're probably gonna use a peeler. They didn't have peelers in the 18th century, so scraping is a lot easier technique. I'm gonna cut these all up into fairly similar sizes because we're gonna boil this all together and we want them to cook evenly. So I'm gonna cut up all these carrots, enough for a nice soup to serve 3 or 4 different people. And we're gonna go ahead and add potatoes to this soup. Now we could do it with just the carrots, but they even kind of hint at the idea that we can mix and match the root vegetables here. I do want to make this mainly a carrot soup, but a few potatoes are really gonna add a nice kind of smoother consistency to it at the end and make it a little more liquidy, which is really kind of what we're looking for in a soup. We can cut to our potatoes almost exactly the same size and boil them along with the carrots. It really isn't gonna take any more time to add these potatoes and put them into this recipe. We're gonna put these onto the fire to boil until they are soft. Now, it depends on how hard the boil is. This might only take, say, 15 minutes or so. Just make sure to check, just pull out one of the pieces of carrot. It's gonna stay harder longer than the potato, but check those carrots when they feel soft, that they're fairly easy to crush, they're done. I'm gonna strain these out, but I want to keep some of the liquid in case we need to add it back to our soup to get to the nice, proper soup consistency. But I will just set this aside and we're gonna drain our root vegetables here, put them back into our bowl and smash them up. We're using just our regular masher here that we use on the channel all the time. This is the typical way that food processing is done in the 18th century. This is the way. And it is used in a lot of different recipes, things that we wouldn't necessarily expect to be smashed up into a puree. They're doing that all the time. I'll just keep smashing this until I get it to a very, very nice, smooth consistency. You can probably have a tool in your kitchen that will speed this process up. Once we're all smashed up and the consistency is looking good, we want to make sure that this is still warm, hopefully. I want to add a good bit of butter, like 3 tablespoons, Some of these recipes might use something like cream or some other liquid to really fill it out and make it into a soup, but this butter is going to do that job and bring a little bit of that butter flavor in, which we really want. This does seem just a little thick to me. They might have served it just like this, but I am going to add back in a little bit of that water that we boiled our root vegetables in to make it a little bit more soup-like. And just like one of those recipes called for, we are going to serve this on sippets. So I'm going to make some toast here and then cut it into slices, put some in the bottom of the bowl as well as some for serving. You can eat with these sippets. In a lot of poor households, they didn't have all the utensils that we would have today. And many times something like a sippet would be exactly what they're eating with. So this is extremely typical for a poor household, but these sippets are very typical for the rich too. So this works in any setting. The soup is ready, and actually it turned out much easier and better than I expected as I was reading the recipe. So the potatoes worked out really well, just holding back a little bit of the boiling water to put into it really made it thin, and of course the butter, just like the recipe calls for, and it turned out wonderful and smooth. It looks really good. Yes, this is a little thicker than you might expect for a soup today, but as far as I can tell, this is very typical of the time period. Let's find out how it turns out. I'm just gonna eat this with the sippet. The texture is really good. Flavor is perfect. You could definitely, perk this up a little bit with the spices that they call for. So they kind of say, spices as you do other things that are similar to this. So obviously something like salt and pepper. Undoubtedly people might have used nutmeg in a recipe like this. And it will work with so many other things. And of course we could spice it up with other root vegetables. We could boil them along with it and make something just like this that works for the rich or the poor alike. An excellent recipe that anybody could try, and it would be perfect for this time of year.